When you look back to the 60s and 70s, I remember all the movies, like the Charles Bronson Death Wish movies. Remember those? Without discussing their cinematic values, right? I remember watching them in certain Clint Eastwood movies, and I, even as a kind of a young person watching them, I think to myself, what's going on here that we have so many movies about somebody who rides into town and redresses evil? I remember one in particular. I had already begun college, and I was studying these issues as a religion major. And I remember the Clint Eastwood movie Hang 'em High, okay? Which means a person is falsely convicted of a crime. He has this terrible scar around his neck, and after that, he decides he's going to hunt people down to redress the damage because the government's not taking care of it. And then the governor comes in and says, you can't do this. I know you've been treated unjustly, but here's what's going to happen. If every person begins to take the law into their own hands because the government's not doing the job, we're back to anarchy. And you have to decide whether you're interested in justice or whether in anarchy. I remember watching this movie and thought to myself, what a sophisticated movie. And then I began thinking of all the other movies that I saw as a younger person without having really thought about these things. And I went back and watched many movies, the Bronson movies and the Clint Eastwood movies. And I remember in almost every one of these movies, the writers put in that moment. Okay? So while there might have been lots of action and lots of hunting people down, almost everyone had the theoretical moment where the writer is saying, here's why we're doing this, because justice is so important that if the government doesn't do its job, the government can't do its job, the government is protecting criminals too much, there's an instinctive human desire to address the grievances. So I think that, just the way that justice is treated in our popular culture shares with you might say it archetypally expresses this profound human need for justice. Just want to add two other levels. So Jewish justice is very strong on what I'll call compensatory justice, meaning if there's been a violation, how do you get restitution, how do you get compensation? On the other hand, Jewish criminal law is, aside from capital cases, death penalty cases, doesn't quite know what to do because there's no incarceration in the ancient world. And since and the laws against the state is a really kind of a rarefied issue. But if a person commits an offense against another person, the question is, well, what do you do? So our idea that a judge can order restitution and you lock them up for a number of years is interestingly not something that ancient Jewish judges would do. There's a tradition that if someone steals from you, you get the thing back plus a fifth. Now, why plus a fifth? Because otherwise thieves would just say, if I get caught, I pay it back, no harm to me. But remember, it was compensation. The thief would not then be incarcerated on top of that. So there is a tradition that if you cause monetary damage intentionally and you broke the law, you would pay it back and you'd add a certain amount. But it was almost all monetary. The idea of criminal law was rather undeveloped. The only area of criminal law that we have, which actually came up in the Hebrew school class on Tuesday, was the issue of lashes, of whipping. And that was only for certain serious offenses, which were just down from capital punishment. And the kids in the class said, oh my God, I can't believe the Torah says to whip people. And I said, well, when you think about it, if you committed some offense and you had the choice between 5 lashes or 5 years in state penitentiary, which would you take? So we went around the room. We all agreed on 5 lashes, except for one student that said, I don't care. I don't want to get anybody, I don't want to be whipped, so I'll rather take the 5 years. As long as it's a minimum security prison, I get to have my video games. I don't want lashes, right? But it was very interesting. The students instinctively said, I much prefer corporal punishment. So then I ruminated on that a bit and thought to myself, and by the way, I've asked this many times. I've asked many people, they say, oh, I can't believe the Torah has whipping as a punishment. And I say, well, which would you prefer? And I give them the thought experiment. They go, I prefer whipping. I said, so what was your moral outrage? They go, I don't know. I hadn't really kind of thought about it. It's actually maybe better.